Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Mardiana Dewi. I'm going to review the history of English literature, start from the Old English period. In later 6th century, Ethelbert, the king of Kent, is baptized. He is the English king to convert to the Christianity. And the 7th century, the rise of the Saxon kingdom, introducing new religious words borrowed from Latin to the Greek. And 673, Venerable Bede, the monk who composed the ecclesiastical history of the English people, find a key source of information about Anglo-Saxon settlement. 700, approximate date of the earliest manuscript records of the Old English. And then 8th century, Scandinavians began to settle in Britain and Ireland, and then settle in the parts of Ireland. 9th century is England began to emerge, so it start to influence the English, and then King Alfred of the Wessex is lead the Anglo-Saxons to victory over the Vikings. So the prose start to translating from the Latin and written in English. 1000 approximate the date of the only surviving manuscript of the Old English, like from the Beowulf. He is an anonymous poet. And then early 11th centuries is Danes attack England, so he take the rule over England and encourage the growth of the Anglo-Saxon culture and literature. 1066 is the Norman invasion, and the characteristic is some distinguishing features of Old English in grammar. Old English is chiefly distinguished from the later stage in the history of English by greater use of a larger set of inflection in verbs, nouns, adjectives, and pronouns, and also connected with by the rather less fixed word order. It also presents grammatical gender and nouns and adjective. Significant author and famous work is Ivric. He is a monk of the late Old English period who worked professionally, often on linguistic matters like Catholic homilies and life of the saint. Are his work. And Alfred the king, who the famous of Old English king called the Alfred the Great, and then Bede the Venerable, he English monk and historian. His work is Ecclesiastical History of the English People, which is the main source for the Old English. And Sedmond is the earliest of the Old English Christian poet. He's known in the Bede's work is the Ecclesiastical History of the English People. And then medieval era, in 476, the fall of the Roman Empire. So Roman had ruled much of the Europe in this era. And then 481 is the rise of the Frank. 732 Islam versus Christianity. 800 is Charlemagne as the Holy Roman Emperor. 835 is the beginning of the Viking attacks, and 871 is Alfred the Great becomes the King of England. 962 Otto the Great becomes the Holy Roman Emperor. 1066 William of Normandy conquers England. 165 the beginning of crusades against Muslim. 1187 is the fall of Jerusalem, and 1189 is Richard the Lionheart ascent to English throne. 1215 is the signing of Magna Carta. So this document is important or significant part because that king was not above the law. And 1337, Hundred Years' War began. 1347, arrival of the Black Death in Europe. 1431, execution of John Arc. 1434, the rise of Medici family. 1444, the Gutenberg invents the printing press. So the characteristic of this era features such a migration of people, invasion, population distribution, and the urbanization characterized of this period. Feature of the Middle English literature, a greater part of the English literature was imitative, so the introduction of French culture and language after the Norman conquest affected the native talk and culture. French became the language of aristocracy and Latin was the language of the court. The significant word is like a Beowulf is the longest epic poem in this era. Le Morte d'Arthur, or we know as the King Arthur, and then Piers Plowman is the famous late medieval dream vision, and then Sir Gawain and the Greek Knight is the anonymous poem. This is considered one of the masterpieces of the Middle English literature. Christine the Peasant is like the book of the city ladies, and then the Canterbury Tales is written by Geoffrey Chaucer. Is the work that famous in the end of the 14th century. The Wall and the Nightingale is the early substantial text to be written in Middle English. And then Renaissance and Reformation era. In 1517 is Martin Luther writes 95 theses, so this document is criticized of the selling of indulgence. Protestants consider publication of these theses to be the beginning of the Reformation. 1521 is the excommunicate letter, so in other words that Pope throws out Luther to the Luther was out of the church, so Luther begins to translate the Bible into the German, and then 1522 is the Reformation spread to Switzerland. 1525, Luther publicly disagrees with other religious reformers on issues of theology. This is called as Anabaptists emerge. And 1531 is Laurentius Petri becomes a Protestant archbishop in Sweden, and he was the leader of the Reformation in the country. And then 1534, England, King Henry breaks the Pope, so he's established the Anglican Church with himself as its head. And 1536, in Switzerland, French lawyer John Calvin published the Institute of the Christian Religion. 1541, Petri and others published the first Swedish translation of the Bible. 1545, the Pope organized the Council of the Trent. 1547, John Knox established the Protestant religion in Scotland. In 1579, Italian reformer Faustus Socinus moves to Poland and established the Unitarian movement. 1618 is the 30 Years' Wars began, and the characteristics of this era is like first the Elizabethan and the Jacobin age. This is in this history of English literature, also known as the Age of Shakespeare, or we call that the golden of the age of literature. And then the literary tendencies of the age, this also influenced by the Renaissance and the Reformation. And then the significant author and the famous work is major. The author is like William Shakespeare, because the other famous work by him are like Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, and many more. And then the Revolution and Restoration era, King Charles I. King Charles I executed in January 1649. And then the restoration of the monarchy by Charles II. and then British Restoration until historic aftermath. So after the arrival of the Charles II to England is known as Apple Oak Day and then was declared as a public holiday. British Restoration as the cultural impact is like the most significant event was the emergence of the theatrical form known as the satirical restoration comedy. And British Restoration until the end of the Restoration is like there are several opinions as to when the British Restoration is ended. Some people only terms the event of the Charles II returns as the Restoration, or the others argue that the entire time regime is the Restoration. Others believe that Restoration applies to the period from the ascension of the Charles II in 166 1660 to the fall of James II in 1688. Characteristic is from the poetry is like the most prominent of the poetry is heroic couple, and then the famous authors like John Dryden, like his work is include the Conquest of Granada, the Indian Queen, and Aurangzeb. And for the drama is like Comedy of Manners, and then the authors like William Congreve and William Wycherley. And from the force is like from the prose is like Thomas Hobbes and John Locke is included of this era. And then 18th century, a new Augustan age, so 1702 until 1714 is the oldest of Augustan authors like Jonathan Swift, and then in with his work The Battle of the Books and The Tale of the Two. And this book is like revealed there is a new prose writer on the scene with the little satirical powers. Robinson Crusoe and Gulliver Travels 1719 until 1726. Daniel Defoe is the author of the Robinson Crusoe, and he is a genius for journalism in age before the newspaper exists, which can accommodate his kind of the material. The English novel 1740 until 49 is during the quarter of the novel the century. This is the original one. So one of the most chaotically is the enduring books of any age is published by 1759 is Laurence's Stearns is the Tristram Shandy. Johnson and Boswell 1755 until 91. They published the book The Life of Samuel Johnson in 1791, and then the Scottish Enlightenment is this during the second half of the 8th century. This is the forefront of the intellectual and the scientific development. For the characteristic is the 8th century literature was characterized by the spirit of realism and romantic features like enthusiasm, passion, imagination, etc. Decline in this period, recent intellect, correctness, satirical spirit, and many more were the main characteristic of the 18th century literature. This 18th century, as we know, is the rise of novel because many philosophers or authors have intellect thinkers well in that era. And then the major author on this era is like Daniel Defoe, Jonathan Swift is were the amongst the major political writers of this era. That's from me. That's all the review from the Old English until the 18th century. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.